Warning, this podcast contains heavy spoilers for not just one movie, but entire franchises. We highly recommend going and watching these movies before listening to us as a companion piece that stitches all the timelines into one creepy, crime-ridden story. There will be no more spoiler warnings. We do not break character. After this, there is no turning back. You've been warned. Hit the music.
You are talking about the nonsensical ravings of a lunatic mind.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
It's alive! It's alive!
You know what? I keep seeing this article. I've been seeing this article for years, right?
Yeah.
I've always wondered if it was real or not. She doesn't look like the type. Well, I'm looking at the article now. It's on the Lad Bible. And it seems to have been published again in August of last year. It just Dexter reminded me a little bit of it. Because it's a revenge thing.
Yeah.
And it's a mom goes on taken style mission and hunts down 10 involved in daughter's murder one by one. Miriam Rodriguez. I always stumble on Rodriguez. Rodriguez. I have to say it with a bit of gusto, or else I can't. Rodriguez. No problem. Rodriguez. I can't say it. The second, I don't know. Anyway, she went on an all-out revenge mission after her daughter was murdered by a cartel, apparently. I don't know if you've seen this woman, but who does she remind me of? She reminds me of someone off TV. I don't mean this to sound race, but she looks like a nice little old Jewish mom off of the TV.
What was her name?
Miriam Rodriguez.
You can't say Miriam like an Irish person.
Miriam Rodriguez. Miriam.
Here, I think I have her. Is there a Netflix thing about her?
I have no idea. Hang on, I'm going to read this. A woman went on a taken-style mission when her daughter disappeared. Miriam Rodriguez from Mexico was devastated when 20-year-old Karen Alejandra, so that's obviously the Alejandra Salinas Rodriguez, went missing in 2012. Confused by the lack of action taken by the authorities to find her daughter, Miriam took matters into her own hands and set about tracking her down. So she went Dexter style on this shit.
Nice.
Following her lengthy investigation, just like Dexter, she's following the code here, she eventually arrived at a gang called Los Zetas, one of the most infamous cartels in Mexico. She was able to narrow down her search to a handful of gang members whom she believed were involved in her daughter's kidnapping. Her daughter's kidnapping. Like something out of a movie, she used fake identities and disguises to delve deeper into the murky criminal underworld. You can see a picture of this woman now, right?
I can see her.
Can you picture this woman going all James Bond on this shit?
I can picture her teaching me.
That's what I'm saying. She eventually gathered enough information to get police to arrest one of the men involved, so she didn't go full homicidal maniac on him. Once he was behind bars, the gang member gave up the names of the others, one of whom was just 18 years old. Somehow she managed to convince the teenager to give her the location of her daughter. Tragically though, when Miriam went to find Karen, she found that her daughter had already been killed. Despite the heartbreaking discovery, Miriam continued in her search for justice, tracking down everyone involved in her daughter. Oh, God damn it. Not dirters.
Lock up your dirters.
Lock up your dirters. This is terrible. I'm talking about a woman who got killed by a cartel here. You're making me laugh, Amy.
I'm sorry.
No, it's poor dirters.
You're the one that's fucking
the murder.
murder.
Even cornered one of the men in an alleyway and put a gun to his back, warning him, "If you move, I'll shoot." This bitch is serious.
Oh my God. What would you do?
Oh, I do whatever she tells me. Yeah, did this? Oh.
No, I mean, in her shoes, what would you do?
Give it a look at her. She does not look like the type, despite some of
See, they're the scariest.
Starting new lives and respectable jobs, Miriam rounded up nearly everyone and handed them over to authorities. My God, in total, she was able to get 10 members of Los Zetas. Sadly, though, her mission came at a cost, obviously.
Yeah.
Her daughter. On Mother's Day of
Not just
2017, she was chasing down one of her last targets. She was shot 12 times in front of her home and was killed.
Yeah.
According to the New York Times, following her destruction of the faction of the cartel, she claimed that she was not afraid of death. I don't care if they kill me. Well, that was kind of bound to happen.
Yeah,
The
fair
cartel
enough.
going to go after you.
Yeah.
But I would say, right fucking no, this woman, they should make a movie about this woman.
Yeah.
Quentin
hang on.
Tarantino, you were talking about making your last
I think
movie, and you were
there might
talking about
be.
making it about the female critic, and then you dropped the idea. Since you've dropped the idea and you're up for the idea of a female hero in this story, let's go with Miriam Rodriguez and her battle
It's called
against
La
the Los
Civil.
Zetos. What?
It's called La Civil,
What is?
the movie about it.
Awesome! I'm watching that this week.
2021 thriller drama.
This is crazy. So this is the right way to do things if you want to track down bad people and get justice. Want to talk about the wrong way to do things?
Maybe.
Hello and welcome to It's Alive Alive Podcast. This is a true crime, paranormal, interstellar podcast covering unbelievable stories that sound like they were ripped straight from the pages of a Hollywood script. I am your host, the man of many names, the outlaw Harley Ray, the bruiser Bronson, Dr. H.R. Smokers, THC, or you can call me Josh for short. And with me as always is my very own scream queen, the perfect combination of beauty and brains, the brightest Smokers, the India Harley expert, the guts and gore, the gorgeous, sexy Aimee Rose. I am on fucking form tonight.
I was just thinking.
Yes!
I was waiting for it to slip up. No. Hi.
There is no fucking slip up. I am buzzing for it. I'm ready for it. We had a bit of a break last week. I've recharged. The 3-week Dexter series is now on week 5 of 6. We will get there. So yeah, don't expect me to be finishing up today.
Okay.
We have a little more to go. It's a big fucking. See, I took. This is one I will admit. I took a bigger bite out of this than I thought I could handle. You know, this is it was a lot.
Yeah.
And I've got the bearings of it now. I'm down to
You live and learn, Josh.
part 3
Yeah.
of 4 over 6 episodes. But this one's fucking packed. Everything about this guy is just packed. Episodes have to be packed because there is just too much there.
Do you know?
And this is only what's known about, the little bits that are known about.
Okay.
Because, as I said, he liked to get rid of evidence, and we'll talk about that a little bit today as well. So, since we last left Dexter, he has married Rita and settled down to domestic life with her 2 children and their new baby, Harrison. Dexter continues to act on the urge to kill, but the strain of his double life affects both his job at Miami Metro Police and his home life. Rita becomes upset that Dexter appears to be lying to her, including keeping his old waterfront condo where he has stashed his blood drop trophies, and their marriage goes through some troubling times.
Well, yeah, she doesn't know it's for his serial killing work. So like any other rational woman, she thinks he's keeping the place to bring home other girls or worse, to shoot up heroin. I mean, as far as she's concerned, he's a recovering addict.
Yeah, well, recovering addicts are not 2 secret things a man shouldn't have. A secret phone or a secret house.
Not unless
and a
when-
secret family. Don't have a secret family either.
Yeah,
That's a
not
bad
unless
idea.
you want to go to a whole load of couples counselling.
As the police investigated a series of small-time crimes and killings in the so-called vacation murders, retired FBI Special Agent Frank Lundy returned to Miami. Deborah Morgan initially worried he had come back to get a bit closer to her, but he later revealed that he was following a case that the FBI refused to handle. The Trinity Killer, believed to be an older Caucasian male, killed 3 people in the same city roughly once each year and in a specific sequence. 1 young woman killed in a bathtub, a mother of 2 killed by falling, and a father of 2 usually bludgeoned to death. The first 2 of these patterns had recently happened in Miami, and Lundy believed he knew when and where the last would be. After rekindling their relationship, both Lundy and Deborah are shot by an unknown assailant. Deborah survives, but Lundy's wounds were fatal. And the police initially assumed that this was another random killing committed by the vacation murderer.
This Trinity Killer must have known he was getting close.
Kind of. We'll talk a little more about that later. Dexter, using Lundy's analysis and records of Trinity, used his own skills to sneak into the building Lundy had under observation, and there he caught sight of the Trinity killer for the first time, deep in the act of dispatching his third victim. Dexter followed the killer to his home and was surprised to learn that he was a man by the name of Arthur Mitchell. I'm always terrible with the name Arthur. This guy's Arthur. Yeah, Arthur. Arthur.
You say
author is if the U is at the start and A-U-T. Yeah. A-U-R-T. Yeah. That's where I get confused.
I've seen a lot of people though, and in Carrick, it's Carrick thing again. They spell their names Arthur, but you pronounce them author.
And see, we had I think there was an author in our family, so I would have heard that name a lot when I was a kid. And when we were watching Peaky Blinders, it used to drive me mental having to say Arthur Shelby's name. But Arthur Mitchell was this guy's name. Mm-hmm. A husband, a father, deacon at a local church, and leader of the Four Walls, One Heart home building charity organization. Arthur was a suburbanite who lived a double life as one of America's most prolific serial killers for 3 decades. He was originally thought by the FBI to be a mere myth, chased by Special Agent Frank Lundy alone. Arthur's kill cycles consisted of a burial of a 10-year-old boy, a woman murdered in a bathtub, a woman falling to her death, and a father of 2 being bludgeoned. He left parts of the ashes of his deceased sister Vera Mitchell at most of these crime scenes. For 3 decades, Arthur maintained a positive public image as a high school teacher, community volunteer, and church deacon. He set up Four Walls, One Heart sites across the country, which he also used as an alibi for the first murders in his kill cycles. Arthur also seemed to be a family man to the public, but was secretly abusive towards his wife Sally, his daughter Rebecca, and son Jonah. Arthur also had an estranged daughter named Christine Hill.
Why do they call him Trinity? Like, he has 4 victims per cycle: the 10-year-old, the single woman, the mother, and the father.
The 10-year-olds were often declared missing, not dead, so that part of his MO wasn't revealed until after his identity was revealed. But we have a little ways to go before we get there, so let's take a little break from Dexter Morgan for a minute and focus on Arthur Mitchell, aka the Trinity Killer. Arthur Mitchell was born to Henry and Marcia Mitchell on the 16th of October 1949. Growing up in a humble 2-story house with his older sister Vera, Mitchell's upbringing was far from ideal. While his mother Marcia tried to instill strict Christian values on her children, Henry would do the opposite, spending his days drinking and hurling abuse at his family, regularly beating his wife in front of his children.
So he's a proper piece of shit.
Yep, and it gets worse. Although there was plenty of allegations and evidence of physical and emotional abuse within the Mitchell household, the only member of the family to show signs of sexual abuse was Marcia herself. That's not to say the thought didn't cross his mind. Arthur regularly witnessed his father peeping on his teenage sister while she showered.
Can we do a nice story sometime? And they all lived happily ever after endings, instead of one of these filled with gore, blood, and incest.
Yeah, sure, we can cover Bambi sometime. Winnie the Pooh, Peter Pan.
The fucking Pooniverse, I can't win.
You know what's even more fucked up? Technically, the Trinity Killer's crimes are the fault of his father. Even his method or ritual for killing are all inspired by Henry Mitchell. After being brought up in that environment and watching his father, who although was abusive, was still the boy's role model. You know, your dad, you can't pick them, and they are your first teachers in life, especially as a little boy. So when he saw Henry peeking, he wanted to see what all the fuss was about, and in 1959 he decided to take a look. Unfortunately, Arthur wasn't as discreet as his father was when it came to being a peeping Tom. He fumbled at the door, startling Vera, who slipped from the shower through the glass shower door, slicing her femoral artery and bleeding to death right there in front of him. Henry blamed Arthur for the death. Marcia blamed Henry because she was no fool and knew that Arthur's actions were learned behaviour, learned from watching Henry in action.
Why did she even stay with the prick?
Different times and hardcore Christian values, till death do us part.
So if you marry the wrong guy by Christian rule, the only way out of that contract is death.
Exactly, and that's exactly how Marcia saw it and how she dealt with it. While deep in the throes of grief and depression and seeing no other way out of her current life, Marcia made the decision to terminate the marriage contract the only way a Christian could. She went to an abandoned building in Tampa, went to the second floor of the building, and threw herself from the window to her death.
How bad does Henry have to be that this woman chose to go to hell rather than live with him? I mean, if she's so religious that she couldn't get a divorce, then she must have known that suicide is considered a sin. So she made a conscious decision to burn in hell rather than stay married to this man.
Thinking of the gravity of that is crazy. I know a lot of people are atheists now and see religion as fairy tales, but for some people it's real life. It's fact. It's what makes up everything. So for her to have that level of belief and to make the choice she did, yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I know guys who believe in the Bible, like born again guys who believe in the Bible to the fucking word, like to the letter.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for her to turn around then and say, well, my options are to live with this guy till death and go to heaven, or to abandon ship now and go to hell forever and decide hell was better than Henry.
She could have just done a runner and hid out for a while.
Well, I think that was the more Catholic thing to do back in the day. And when you split up, it was more you just separated. You just didn't divorce. That was it. You just lived separate lives, and that was it.
Yeah.
But still, then you're technically true fucking the Catholic and Christian rules, living in sin if you then start another relationship with somebody else, even if you don't get married.
Yeah.
Because you are in a relationship with somebody
caught always.
Unless you decide to live a lonely life on your own in your own home and never have another relationship after you've separated.
Or you had no kids and you claimed that the guy couldn't get it up and then you could get an almond.
Right, whatever you gotta do. As you can imagine, life with Henry didn't get any easier for young Arthur. Now on the hook for 2 deaths in his father's eyes instead of 1. But age and constant alcohol abuse had caught up with Henry, and he wasn't as strong or as quick as he used to be. So while the physical abuse eased up, the emotional abuse piled on. This eventually came to a head sometime in 1964 when a 15-year-old Arthur took a hammer, and as his father slept on his filthy armchair in front of the TV, Arthur bashed his brains in.
How did he get away with that? Like, surely they would have questioned him.
Arthur claimed he came home one evening and found his father murdered. It was no secret that Henry had enemies, or at least people who he'd pissed off over the years, so there was no real stretch to think he had finally just pissed off the wrong person. Plus, the community in this area had rallied around Marsha and Arthur after Vera's death, and again for Arthur after Marsha's death. They understood the hardship he had lived through with Henry and saw him as a victim of extreme tragedy and misfortune. With no witnesses and no fingerprints, the case went cold. It's still classed as an unsolved case to this day due to lack of evidence, but Jonah, Arthur's son, would later say it was like an open secret in the household, with Arthur often making veiled references to his father's faith.
So he's now free of Henry, free of his past life, so what did Arthur do next?
Well, this is the 1960s and Arthur was very close to 16, so he pretty much lived in the family home alone until finishing school and heading to college where he studied to become a high school teacher.
And what did he do for money?
After Marsha died about a year before he murdered Henry, Arthur took out a life insurance policy on Henry and lived off that until college, where he worked odd jobs to earn his keep. He studied from 1967 to 1970 at the University of Miami. It was while attending the university he met and began dating Lorraine Hill, also studying to be a teacher. Arthur and Hill seemed to hit it off, holding the same moral and religious leanings. They married in 1973, and his first daughter, Christine, was born the following year.
And up to this point, his only murderer is his father, right?
Right, but he partially believes his father's words. If he hadn't been peeking, then Vera wouldn't have been startled and fell, and his mother would have never become depressed enough, she wouldn't have become depressed enough to kill herself.
Yeah.
This guilt ate him up, haunting his every thought and dream. A trinity of memories playing over and over again in his head. His sister lying in her blood, the police at the door after his mother's suicide, and the feeling of bringing the hammer quite literally down on his father's head. A decade of the same images over and over and over and over, enough to send the sanest man mad. You see, that's what makes Arthur Mitchell so damn interesting. But we'll get to that soon. Not a whole pile is known about Lorraine Hill, just that she was Mitchell's first wife and died of a heart complication sometime in the early 90s.
He was married to Sally Mitchell in 1990, so obviously he split with Lorraine as opposed to remarrying after her death.
Yeah. Arthur walked out on Lorraine and Christine in 1980, cutting all ties at first, but eventually reconnecting with Christine after Lorraine's death, promising to visit her twice a year, one holiday of her choice and her birthday.
And what made him walk out?
I think Arthur had realised at this stage he was a killer, a sociopath with no real emotions for others. He had been damaged by his trauma-filled upbringing, and the murder of his father had just lit the fuse in him. How he had held off so long is actually a miracle here. No, that's not to say that he didn't kill in the 10 years between his father and the beginning of the Trinity cycles. A lot of killers tend to stay quiet about their early work.
Yep, that's usually because they're not too proud of their work. Like, obviously, some of their first attempts will be messy and full of mistakes. And these guys are usually narcissists to the highest degree, and they want you to look at them like monsters, unstoppable killers, not like a fumbling virgin struggling for the first time. What I don't understand, though, is if you left one of the family because he was a sociopath, why start a new one in the 90s?
Lorraine had become pregnant with Christine very fast after the marriage. So close that some Christians would call it a photo finish, if you know what I mean. And that kind of image meant something to Arthur, who at this point was only not killing because of his deep faith and belief in God, heaven and hell. By the time Sally came around, Arthur understood, just as Dexter did, that a person like him, a predator, needed to put on a mask for the sheep. So with that, he took a job at a local high school, became the leader of the church, began travelling and working for the charity Four Walls, One Heart, a charity that built homes for the homeless on the weekends, and married Sally Mitchell. Together, they welcomed Jonah in 1992 and Rebecca in 1994.
So when did the cycles begin?
It's believed the first Trinity cycle took place in 1976 in Baltimore, Maryland. What set it off after a decade is anyone's guess, but if you ask me, from the minute he swung that hammer at Henry, he was a ticking time bomb. This time bomb will go on to kill a confirmed 279 people over 69 kill cycles. 276 within the cycles and 3 who were just in the wrong place at the wrong time. Trinity kill cycles show up in 34 out of the 50 states of America, usually during school holiday periods. His only kills outside of these cycles were his father Henry, a man called Kyle Butler, and, well, the last will be revealed in good time.
Keeping the audience hooked. Always leave the good stuff until after the last commercial break.
You realise that's a South Park reference, right?
I do.
Yeah?
Yep.
Oh, I love that fucking episode.
I've lived with you long enough to realise the South Park reference when I see it.
When they're forced to watch the entire Russell Crowe show, where he's fighting around the world. So you can see the Terrence and Phillip movie trailer.
Yeah.
Fighting around the world. Anyway, as I said before, what kicked off the first cycle is unknown, but in Baltimore, Maryland in 1976, Trinity took his first 3 victims, or so they thought. First, he would choose a girl who resembled his sister Vera in image and age. He would stalk her, then break into her house, subdue her, run a bath, then force the woman to undress with him and enter the bath, him cuddling her from behind. He would then slash at one of the woman's main arteries with a scalpel, holding her tight so she couldn't struggle. He would leave the body in the bathtub to be found to look like a suicide. His next victim would be a mother of 2. He would again stalk a mother, watch her, and then, when the opportunity arose, he would kidnap her. He would force the victim to a local abandoned building, lead her to the top at gunpoint, and force her to jump off, telling her he would go and kill her entire family in agony, inflicting the most torture on the children if she didn't jump.
And a mother would jump for that reason, 100% guaranteed.
Again, causing the second death to look like a suicide.
Yeah.
The third victim was always a father of 2 to represent Henry. He would find a man that met the requirements, stalk them, learn their pattern, then strike, bludgeoning them with a hammer to the head. This is why he was called the Trinity Killer. But what detectives didn't know was that there was actually a 4th victim in each cycle. The girl to represent Vera, the mother to represent Marcia, and the father to represent Henry.
Someone to take his place to act out his role in the cycle, but he's alive, so how does that make sense?
Along with the above-named victim pool, Arthur would kidnap a 10-year-old boy. He would then keep the boy in the basement of one of his charity homes. He forced the boy to wear his old pajamas, play with his old trains, while the same childish record played over and over again in the background. It's not believed that Mitchell sexually abused these boys, although he would stay in the basement and play with them like he was just another kid. It was found later that each of the victims' fingers were pointing towards seemingly, well, nothing. But later, closer inspection on his last cycle scene showed that the bodies were pointing to a smudge of ash on the walls. Vera's ashes.
How come the boys' murders never went noticed?
They were usually filed as missing persons. No bodies, no murder. Mitchell's charity work wasn't done out of the goodness of his heart. Just like everything in his life, it was a mask, a smokescreen. All the kill cycles coincide with 4 walls, 1 build projects. The bodies of the missing boys were found after Trinity was revealed and were found in all 34 states at 34 different charity builds. 1 house in each project held the corpse of a 10-year-old in its foundations.
I hope Dexter gets him.
Dexter was enamored by this man, almost idolized him for a short period. You see, as we said earlier, since we last spoke, Dexter had married Rita, moved in with the extended family of Astor and Cody, and even added to the clan with his own first son, which he named Harrison.
Oh, has he been domesticated?
Not quite, and that's where the problem lies. You see, Dexter was struggling with balancing his family life with his hobby, meaning his work was getting sloppier and happening a lot less frequent.
It happens when you have kids, but it gets better, Dexter, don't worry.
Dexter was at his wits' ends and gagging for it when the now retired Special Agent Frank Lundy turned up back in town, reconnecting with the Morgan siblings. He told them all about his Trinity case and how this was the one he just couldn't let go of, but couldn't get real backing on due to the female deaths looking always like suicides. It didn't take them long to connect the ages and the locations in sequence, but also to note that it happened primarily during school breaks. This told Lundy he was looking for an educator or at least a school worker. Christine Hill, who had become a Miami journalist, knew her dad's secret. She began dating homicide detective Joey Quinn, Deb's partner in homicide, and speaking off the record, told her some of the Trinity information Deborah had shared with him.
How did she find out about her dad's secret life?
Being held at arm's length by him all her life made her desperate to please him and win his approval. So that's why she covered for him. She had big-time daddy issues.
Okay.
But those daddy issues didn't stem from abandonment alone. You see, when Christine was 5 years old, she walked in on her father as he was in the bath with one of his victims. For years, she believed it to be a bad dream or a false memory, but as her journalistic skills grew and she studied her father more and more, she realised that what she saw was her father as the Trinity killer. Now again, any sane person is handing him in, but he was her father, and the mental manipulation and hold he had over her was strong. So strong that when Quinn told her of Deb and Lundy's theory, she shot and killed Lundy under the guise of being the vacation killer. A killer who had been randomly shooting and robbing terrorists at the time of the Trinity final cycle. Lundy's death weighed heavily on Christine, and as the net began to close in, she began to break down, taking her own life when confronted with her crimes. Deborah was heartbroken as she and Lundy had rekindled their relationship while investigating the Trinity case.
Okay, it's honesty time. We have a confession to make. We suck at socials, no good at Insta, can't send a tweet or an X or whatever that super villain looking motherfucker is calling it now. Stick to your space cars, Elon. But we know you want to chat, you want to be kept updated, you want to be alive all the goddamn time. So we're getting down from the antisocial soapbox and giving this a try. So come chat to us on Insta and Twitter at AliveAlivePod, or hit us up by email at itsalivealivepod@gmail.com. We want to hear from you. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. This is a project, it's still a work in progress, and we just want to give you more what you like and less of what you can't stand. So give us a like, give us a follow, we'll always hit you back, and we'll always try to reply to everyone. So come say hi. We don't bite. Well, at least Aimee doesn't. And she keeps me well fed, so you got nothing to worry about. Now, back to the show.
While Deborah mourned Lundy, Dexter figured out who Trinity was and stalked him for the kill, knowing any chance of justice died with Lundy, so now Mitchell could be his. But what he saw when he began to hunt amazed him. He watched as this man, who was on his 69th cycle of quadruple murders spanning over 3 decades, sang and spoke at his church, interacted with students with patience and care, and took pride in his family, home, and faith. A true pillar of the community, a true wolf in sheep's clothing. But 2009 and Cycle 69 was to be the end of Trinity, and in a way, I think he knew it. He was getting on in age, and people at the time said he was prone to bouts of depression and frustration. When he got into these moves, he'd hide out in his garage/workshop where he was building the family caskets. Yes, you heard that right. The family caskets. Arthur was a skilled carpenter and often spent hours hiding in his workshop. Whether what he was doing in there was all woodwork is unknown, but there was times his son Jonah says that the workshop was locked and off limits while his father worked away inside. To the outside world, and even Dexter himself, the Mitchell family looked like your typical all-American family, a neighbour you'd be happy to have. But what went on in public sight was vastly different to the reality of the Mitchell home. In private, the Mitchell household was a prison camp. Rebecca was locked away in her room 90% of the time to protect her purity, and Jonah was expected to play the all-American boy, star athlete with perfect grades, 50s style morals, and nothing but full compliance and respect towards Mitchell himself as the head of the household.
Well, you should show your parents respect and fairness.
Agreed, but Mitchell didn't understand the difference between respect and fear. So more often than not, he physically reprimanded Jonah for even the smallest violations. Again, like with Christine, in private Mitchell was cold and disapproving towards his family. But they could feel they were under the thumb of a vicious predator, and any mistake could see them all land in the caskets being built in the shed.
Did they know he was a killer too?
No, they just thought he was possessive and abusive, but in hindsight, they said they weren't surprised at the revelation. After Mitchell's identity was revealed, he went missing, only showing up once more in 2011 to murder his wife Sally and daughter Rebecca, making Rebecca look like a suicide like the murders previous to her. But with Sally, he appeared to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, because for his last confirmed murder, Arthur Mitchell bludgeoned his wife to death with a hockey stick. Yeah. See, I did it right there. I wrote down Arthur instead of Arthur. Fuck up. The only surviving Mitchell is Jonah, who went on to tell his story and provide most of the source for today's story. He always claimed that his father had been hanging around with a man by the name of Kyle Butler. He would later see Kyle in the paper under the name Dexter Morgan. After Dexter Morgan's death in 2021, he came forward with his information stating he felt he had to keep Dexter's identity a secret due to him saving his family from his father. He also later confessed that his sister really did kill herself, but that it was him that killed his mother. He said he blamed her for Rebecca's death, for keeping them around Arthur for as long as they did and around all that abuse. Her indifference to Rebecca's death was the last straw, and he snapped, beating her to death. He got off due to temporary insanity and severe PTSD-related mental health issues.
So I take it the Kyle Butler Trinity killed was mistake identity due to a made-up Dexter alias.
Yep, a real Sarah Connor moment. Right name, wrong person.
That's Henry and Kyle, so still 1 mystery murder.
Soon.
So how did Dexter catch Trinity? I would have loved to see the look in his face when his mate Kyle finally brings him to justice for so many victims.
Before Dexter could reveal himself, he witnessed Arthur kidnap a child coming to the end of the 69th cycle. Dexter blew his cover saving the kid as Arthur tried to intern him in concrete, burying the child alive, sedated, but alive. The kid, Scott Smith, is how we know what used to go on in these weird basement parties. Smith said he felt sorry for Mitchell, thinking he was slow. He believed Mitchell when he said if he played along a little while, he'd let him free and go back to his parents.
Yeah.
Obviously, that was never on the cards for Scott, who was seconds away from going missing without a trace when Kyle Butler showed up. Mitchell escaped, but now he was on Dexter's trail, and when he realised the man named Kyle Butler at the address Dexter had given him wasn't the right man, he went and dug a little deeper, leading him to Miami Metro, where it can be seen on old CCTV footage, the two foes standing face to face, Arthur smirking, Dexter looking surprised.
So now the race is on. Serial killer Avenger versus super serial killer monster.
A race we can only believe that Dexter won, as he was still alive up until 2021 and Trinity went missing in 2009, when you discount Jonah's false accusations. Jonah also states that after he murdered his mother, he met Dexter again and begged him to kill him for murdering his mother. Dexter assured him that Arthur was gone permanently, implying he killed him, and told Jonah to forgive himself and move on. But before Trinity went missing from the face of the earth, he had one more body to drop. Learning Dexter's true identity opened up a treasure trove of information, such as family life and home address. Arthur Mitchell's last murder on this earth was designed to look like the beginning of his 70th cycle. A woman who appeared to have committed suicide in a bath left to be found by a loved one. But this time was different. The woman was not a single young woman who resembled his sister, but instead a petite blonde in her mid-30s, the mother of three. The bathroom tap was left to trickle to cause a small flood of blood on the bathroom floor, and her youngest child was put sitting in the centre of the room, the bloody water pooling around him. The child was Harrison Morgan, born in his mother's blood just like his father.
Patreon is alive, alive, live, alive, live, alive. Patreon is alive, alive, horror podcast. Patreon is alive, alive, live, alive, live, alive. Patreon is alive, alive, horror podcast.
Hey kids, can't get enough of that blood, guts and gore? Then head on over to our Patreon, where for just $5 a month you'll get exclusive access to our true crime show Real Monsters and horrific history tales from Playing with Bones with Aimee Rose, along with early access to our minisodes and ad-free access to everything else. All this and loads more horror-tastic extras from the Horrorverse. So what are you waiting for? Permission? Go nick your parents' card today and subscribe now at patreon.com/It's Alive Alive Pod. Remember, that's It's Alive Alive Podcast, the really, really fake true crime horror podcast. It's Alive Alive, all the guts and gore with none of the guilt.
If Jonah is to be believed, in all likelihood Rita was murdered only hours before Dexter killed Mitchell, and he was unaware of Rita's passing at the time of Mitchell's killing. After finding her body, Dexter picked up Harrison, walked from the room and calmly called in the homicide to Miami Metro. Most of his colleagues put his demeanour down to shock, but Detective Joey Quinn heard Dexter say something that stuck with him as the dazed widower muttered, "I killed her," to seemingly himself. This caused him to briefly look into Dexter's connection to Trinity, almost IDing him as the mystery Kyle Butler. Before his superiors told him to back the fuck off and leave Dexter grieve, and the FBI told him to fuck off and let the Mitchell family be, so they didn't blow their witness protection. Again, they thought Arthur's still out there and alive on the lam, so they needed to keep the fucking Mitchell family safe.
Yeah.
But this inquiry, along with many more breadcrumbs of information, would lead another detective his way later, leading to the Morgan family downfall in 2013. Astor took Rita's death particularly hard and blamed Dexter for it. Unable to reconcile, Astor decided that she wanted to live with her grandparents in Orlando, Florida, and she and Cody left Miami. So now alone as a single parent, Dexter moved back into his old apartment with Harrison. It's believed that while he was most definitely still active throughout this period, his own project slowed down due to parental duties. Or at least that's how it seems. Experts believe that after such a close call with Trinity, and with more and more detectives starting to pay attention to him, Dexter stopped keeping such detailed journals, or at least he hid them better or wrote them and then destroyed them later. So I think it might have been a part of the ritual was just writing them. You know?
Yeah.
I think he was feeling the net closing in and would often get bouts of paranoia, causing him to regularly re-examine his crimes and destroy any evidence, both physical or written. The journal started up again around 2011 when a killer going by the moniker the Doomsday Killer began to harass Miami and would run until his suspected death in 2013. I mean Dexter's suspected death in 2013.
And why did he keep these ones? I mean, the 2006 journal we have because it was his link to Brian Moser. The 2007 he kept because, like all serial killers, he's a narcissist and couldn't help but keep a journal on the investigation of his crimes, especially when he beat the system and framed Dokes. Trinity he saw as a kindred spirit in maybe a glimpse into his future as he began his own life. Ironically, it was that interest in Trinity's life balance and dynamic that saw the death of his own family just as it was beginning. So for him to keep another 2 solid years of journals, which he kept until his death in 2013, they must have held a lot of relevance.
Suspected death in 2013.
Suspected death.
They essentially document his downfall in 2013. And I think after he fakes his death and goes missing, he kept them with him to remind him of his mistakes. Something to read to force shame on his near emotionless soul. So as I said, he was keeping a low enough profile, but then a juicy one showed up on his doorstep. One he felt was made for him and he couldn't turn it down. This was the infamous Doomsday Killer. Travis Gleadson Travis Marshall committed biblical themed murders and worked at the Miami Cultural Center as a conservator in papers and bindings for paintings and artifacts, etc. Sounds like your dream job.
Huh.
Previously, he had studied at the University of Tallahassee, where he earned his master's degree in art history. Travis was, for the most part, a polite, calm and collected individual, and his apartment was kept orderly and clean. On the surface, he appeared to be a soft-speaking gentleman. However, Travis suffered from severe psychological effects. Due to his delusional mindset, Travis thought that a man he had killed named Professor James Geller was still alive.
I've been reading up on Geller, and it's actually an interesting enough story on its own. So James Geller was born sometime in the 1940s to the early 1950s. Most of his early life was a mystery, and nothing prior to 2008 was known about his character. It was likely, though, that Geller had an obsession with the end of days for most of his adult life, as he wrote several books regarding the subject. Geller became a professor at the University of Tallahassee in 1996 to teach religious studies. In this time, he had a teacher's assistant by the name of Clarissa Porter and formed a relationship with her while working on a theory about an early AD cult known as the Enseret. The cult believed that the Book of Revelations was more than just a biblical prophecy, but actually a code that explained how to physically bring about the end of the world. According to his notes, Geller deciphered the code as having 7 steps, with each requiring a sacrifice to trigger the end of days. Geller depicted the details in a leather-bound book which remained in the possession of his Clarissa Porter. For what was then apparently a practice run for the Doomsday tableaus. Well, maybe that's how the French would say it, tableaus. Tableaus. Clarissa Porter was posed lying naked on the ground next to a dead lamb. This took place in 2008 and Geller got into hot water with the university. One of his students, Travis Marshall, took a great interest in the subject and was congratulated by the professor upon his graduation in the university. Shortly thereafter, an ancient sword that belonged to John the Revelator was stolen from the university and Geller was blamed. And after being fired for this incident, Geller vanished from the public eye and seemingly went underground. An Ended Times website in his name developed a following of believers.
Travis was the younger of 2 children, his older sister being Lisa Marshall. At an unspecified time in Travis' childhood, he killed both of his parents by taking control of a steering wheel, thus forcing the vehicle to crash into a tree. The incident was recorded as a car accident. However, a psych evaluation revealed that his doctor felt Travis was the one responsible for their deaths. His older sister Lisa became protective of him both as a child and as an adult. Travis' psychiatrist, deceased for 2 years by the time of the Doomsday Killings, was Dr. Benjamin Carlson. According to his reports, Travis often had breaks from reality, including violent tendencies since childhood, lack of empathy, and delusions of grandeur. He also wrote that Travis was a master manipulator. There was no signs of parental abuse. Travis was given a prescription for chlorpromazine. Is that right?
Chlorpromazine.
Which is an antipsychotic drug generally used to prevent hallucinations. After the death of his doctor, Travis discontinued treatment. While attending the University of Tallahassee, Travis met Professor James Geller. He became obsessed with his work on the End of Days, and in 2008 stole the sword of John the Revelator, which was blamed on Geller and cost him his job. Travis then approached his former professor, claiming that they were the two witnesses from Revelation 11. Geller told Travis that he was delusional. Travis tried to convince Geller that they were the chosen ones and stated that neither of them could be harmed. To prove this, he stabbed the professor with the sword, after which Geller died from the wound.
No shit.
So, no miracle. Travis then hid his body in a freezer beneath the church named Santa Maria de Loreto. Travis shut out the memory and believed that Professor Geller was still alive. Sounds like the Christian thing to do. He began to aid the professor in preparing for the End of Days, which didn't result in a tableau until 2011. So in his eyes, he was preparing for it up until this point. But it is such a fucking Christian thing to do.
Absolutely.
This is what I believe is going to happen. Oh shit, it didn't happen. Let's hide it in the freezer and say it happened. Travis killed with a purpose, to bring on the End of Days. He did not feel remorse when someone died in the process and viewed the death as justified sacrifice. His focus was on executing what he thought was God's plan. Due to his religious fervor, he even targeted an innocent child. Yet when Dexter confronted Travis with the dead body of Geller, he initially couldn't accept that he had killed him.
So you're saying he staged the killings like the Bible tableaus. Like, how did he manage that? I'm looking at a list of them here. He tried 7 major tableaus. The 7-headed serpent, the 4 horsemen, the angel of death, the whore of Babylon, the bowls of wrath, the wormwood, and the lake of fire.
Yep. And 2 minor tableaus.
Oh, sorry.
The scales of justice and the lamb.
What were you saying about bowls of wrath?
No, I made a mistake there. I thought it was the bowls of wrath for a reason.
That's what
You'll understand why in a minute.
Oh, shit.
Why I thought bowls, and we'll get into that in a second. Travis' official body count is 11, being stopped by Dexter as he planned the 12th kill, that being the minor tableau we just referred to, the lamb, which Travis planned to use Harrison for after discovering that Dexter was hunting him. The lamb tableau was depicted earlier in the artistic tableau by Professor Geller with the photo of Clarissa Porter with the dead lamb on her head. The lamb representing sacrifice and the girl represents sinfulness. The concept was later used by Travis Marshall as his last tableau to bring on the End of Days. The enactment was to take place on the top of a Miami skyscraper during an eclipse and included the sacrifice of an innocent. The tableau was unsuccessful in ending the intended victim's life, Harrison Morgan. After a conflict between Travis and Dexter Morgan, Harrison was rescued in time by his father, stopping the whole ritual.
Yeah.
While this tableau wasn't a success, many of his others were, and were extremely theatrical in their display. Before we get to Travis's failure and end, let's take a quick look at what this loving Christian achieved as God's judge, jury, and executioner. So Marshall managed to pull off 4 tableaus. The first kill, Omar Rivera, involved capturing a pregnant female snake from a swamp and taking 7 of the baby snakes. The next day, Travis approached Omar at his fruit stand and assaulted him with the sword of John the Revelator. This is why I thought bowls when I saw bowls of rat. It's obviously the 7-headed serpent, but I misunderstood it at the time.
Okay.
He drug his body down a nearby path where he killed and disemboweled him, replacing his intestines with the baby snakes. Bowls of rat in my head. But obviously not as bowls of rat, but this is obviously not that. Travis sewed up his victim using surgical equipment and dumped the body offshore, expecting it to wash up within the next day or so to send the message. The message seemed to be the snakes hidden between the sewn stitches of the symbol for Alpha and Omega. The second kill, Nathan Roberts, was a bit more elaborate. Travis used a ruse to capture Nathan Roberts, after which he forced him to beg for forgiveness from God. In preparation for the tableau, 4 horses were stolen from stables in Miami, and mannequin parts were brought to the church. After Nathan was killed, his body was cut into multiple parts, similar to the Bay Harbor Butcher and the Ice Truck Killer. Sewn piece by piece to mannequin parts and then placed on 4 horses to march into town. The symbol of Alpha and Omega was painted on the horses' heads.
That's elaborate.
Well, yeah, the 4 horsemen. Pretty fucking crazy. And I mean, they must have thought when they saw coming under the street that they had 4 bodies in their hands. Do you know?
Mm-hmm. Would you believe it's like the 4 horsemen, though?
No, I think I believe people when they said there was just a crazy serial killer out there. Do you know? Especially if it's dead bodies. If it's like physically 4 fucking horsemen of the apocalypse running down the road, then yeah, maybe we'll talk. But, John, but if it's mannequins with body parts sewn to them, I'm going to be like, there's probably one crazy guy out there.
I forgot they're mannequins.
The third victim, Erin Bear, was a girl who briefly dated Travis. She was placed in a greenhouse set up hanging on a structure with a tripwire that would activate her death. Once the wire was tripped, her arms were pulled up and her body fell into a spiked collar dug into her neck, killing her. Alright, yeah, so the collar was kind of not full, like kind of underneath her, like loose. And once the tripwire went off and she hung, the collar would like dig into her neck.
Kind of like the Heretics 4 I could run about.
Yeah, sounds like that. Sounds like a jigsaw kind of death. In addition, a nearby cupboard was filled with locusts as a sign of the apocalypse, so they shot out as well. Oh, I might add, the police are the people who knocked the tripwire off.
Oh, shit one.
The symbol of Alpha and Omega were found outside, formed by dead fish. Holly Benson was intended to be the whore of Babylon. Travis's sister and guardian since their parents' death would replace her, although Travis would return to kill Benson later after regretting leaving her alive. Travis's duty, when it came to his sister, he saw that as the ultimate sacrifice. You know, he was sacrificing for God again, so that was a big one for him. Travis's duty in his tableau was to brand the mark of Alpha and Omega on the victim while providing his blood for her to drink. He did all this after stabbing his sister to death, pouring the blood down her throat post-mortem. Lisa was found posed like the whore of Babylon outside the elementary school where she had worked. So a bunch of little kids turn up to school in the morning seeing the old whore of Babylon.
Yeah. So this whole time, police think that this is both Geller and Marshall working together.
Yeah, they believed it was Geller. Marshall didn't hit the radar until later on. They knew he was getting help, but the Doomsday website and its followers led to the belief that he could be heading an online religious cult. Originally believed to be hosted by Professor James Geller, the website, beginningoftheend.com, functioned as a blog for entries relating to the end of days. However, since it was founded in 2008, which is the same year that Travis Marshall killed his former professor, it is likely that Travis is actually the creator of the blog. And I think later on it was proven through IP addresses. The website, along with various books written by Professor Geller, created a cult following of believers in the end times that did not broaden until the start of the Doomsday tableaus. So this started actually, but like the Doomsday preppers and shit like that were all for this, all the fucking hardcore Christians and all this. So Travis had some followers, like, you know. With all the body parts and blood involved with the crime scene, Dexter was on site for each of the tableau crime scenes. Having had to cut back on his hobby due to his status as a single working parent, Dexter couldn't help but relish in another big one to sink his teeth in. So with Miami Met's best struggling to find clues on the Doomsday case, Dexter took it upon himself to track down Geller, realising pretty fast that the easiest way to find Geller was through Marshall, a man he surmised must be Geller's accomplice, judging off Geller and Marshall's age and the complexity and physicality of the scenes.
I take it Marshall wasn't quiet about his love for Geller then.
No. He was president of the fan club. He's biggest supporter and champion. He'd burn your ears off about Geller at every opportunity, making him a convenient starting off point for Dexter, who just got lucky that the loudest supporter was actually the perpetrator. Now, here's the complex thing about Marshall's condition. He believed truly that Geller was still alive. Not just that, but he truly believed that Geller was forcing him to commit all his crimes. He thought like that Geller was punishing him by making him kill his sister as well. Like, you know, in his head and all this. He blamed Geller for everything to Dexter before his death. So Dexter believed that Marshall was kind of maybe being led along by Geller and an innocent kind of bystander in this whole thing.
Yeah.
And when he confronted Marshall about Geller, it wasn't as an adversary but as an ally, suggesting that they kill Geller together and put an end to his evil plan, freeing Marshall while scratching Dexter's killer itch. Dexter eventually figured out that Professor Geller had been killed by Travis 3 years previous and now existed only in the latter's mind. Travis marked Dexter as the Beast and tried to kill him in one of his tableaus, the Lake of Fire, but Dexter escaped, saved by a passing migrant boat. Basically attacked Dexter while Dexter was on his boat, the Slice of Life,
Shit.
and blew up the boat and kind of had it so that the water be on fire and Dexter would drown and in the Lake of Fire. You know?
Okay, yeah.
But every time I hear the Beast, I just think of, we'll get to talk about this guy eventually, but there's a guy who believed he was the Red Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a part of a much bigger story about another guy named Hannibal Lecter, cannibal, who gets involved with all this. But we'll get into all of that eventually at some point. But the Red Dragon thing, the Beast was a big part of that story as well. So that's pretty cool. So this guy obviously saw him in the same vein because the Beast was a very religious, the Red Dragon is a very religious thing. So I would assume this is a similar thing. And thinking about Travis's job, and thinking, again, people won't know what we're talking about unless they know the story of the Red Dragon. I can't remember his actual name. It was Dollarhide, something Dollarhide. He was the Red Dragon killer, and he went into one of these places to witness, because the Red Dragon is a painting. He went in to look at it and he tried to eat it.
Yeah.
But it's very similar to the setup that Travis would work in. So I wonder, would he have maybe been looking at similar kind of scripture and pictures and stuff like that to get him going. But so he saw Dexter as the Beast. Finally, Travis kidnapped Dexter's son to use as a sacrifice in his final tableau, thinking that the Beast was dead. Dexter rescued Harrison while knocking Travis unconscious in a scuffle. He took Travis back to the church where Travis carried out his earlier murders. Dexter set up the kill room as usual. Plastic everywhere. Travis tied to the church altar by cling film, tools ready for use.
What about the kid? He already brought Harrison along.
No, he got a sitter. The fact that Travis was the Doomsday Killer was common news and a manhunt was underway for him. Dexter claimed he had to work late on Marshall's last known kill room, the church, giving him an excuse to go missing for a few hours and an excuse to be at the church. Dexter woke Marshall and went through his usual ritual, forcing Marshall to admit what he was, all while mocking his beliefs. He took the scalpel, sliced his cheek, and took a drop of blood for his slides. All the while, his sister Deborah Morgan, worried about her brother, fearing his working late, was a ploy to keep him at a distance from herself and Harrison and the reality of Rita's death. She decided to bring her brother some food in a ploy to spend some time with him and get him talking. Obviously, as I said, Dexter was not aware of his sister's concern. And after throwing one more verbal jab at Travis Marshall, he raised his knife in the air, plunging it down into the Doomsday Killer's chest just as his sister walked through the door. It was at that very moment Deborah Morgan realised her brother was and always had been the Bay Harbour Butcher.
All I can picture is her head turning into the mind-blown emoji.
pretty accurate way to describe what happens to her next. But for that, you'll have to wait just a little longer as we dive further into Dexter's past, Deborah's downfall, and the fake and eventual real deaths of Dexter Morgan when we wrap up all this on the Bay Harbor Butcher Dexter Morgan Part 4 next week. And I promise it'll be next week. Until then, you know what to do. Follow us on socials at Alive Alive Pod and check out our Patreon at It's Alive Alive Pod for great shows like our Mini Monsters companion show Real Monsters and Amy's great horrific history podcast Playing with Bones, along with classic episodes of Behind the Mask and classic Real Monsters. Along with that, early access to the whole week's Mini Monsters every Monday.
All that, and you get ad-free access to our main show and the weekend update, all for just $5 a month. That's on Patreon at It's Alive Alive Pod.
And now the first 7 days are free, so it costs you nothing to go check us out. We'll be back next Wednesday with more tales from the Horrorverse. It's Alive Alive Podcast, all the guts and gore with none of the guilt. See you all next time. Same Alive Alive time, same Horrorverse channel. Okay, love you. Bye-bye.